This is a story about Christopher Robin. Christopher Robin spends a lot of time popping in and out of adventures in the 100-acre wood. Often, he is just wandering along in a wandering sort of way, thinking about nothing, when he bumps into Pooh and Piglet. Usually Pooh thinks it's time for a smackerel, and they go home for tea, or sometimes he bumps into Eeyore, who lifts his head gloomily, or perhaps he meets Tigger, who knocks over Christopher Robin with a Tigger bounce, and so on. And there are times when he knows he's needed and can help in some way, like the time when Pooh was looking for a balloon, so he could fly to the bees making honey, or when Eeyore lost his house and Christopher Robin decided to help him find it. But some of his favourite times of all are when he plans an adventure, such as the expedition to the North Pole, or a special tea party, as he did for Pooh. So are you sitting comfortably? Here are just a few of Christopher Robin's favourite moments with his friends in the 100-acre wood. One of the silliest times of all was the day when Rabbit came to fetch Christopher Robin because Pooh was unable to get out of Rabbit's house. He had eaten so much honey that he was now stuck half in, half out of Rabbit's front door. Christopher Robin shook his head and smiled. "Silly old bear," he said, and he said it so lovingly that everyone was quite hopeful that Pooh might get unstuck again. But after trying to push and pull Pooh out of the hole, Christopher Robin knew that there was only one thing to be done. "Pooh," he said, "we shall have to wait for you to get thin again." Poor Pooh was rather anxious. How long does getting thin take?" he asked. "About a week, I should think," said Christopher Robin, "and I'm afraid that means no food, but we will read to you." And Pooh sighed with such sadness that that's exactly what Christopher Robin did, while Rabbit hung his washing over Pooh's feet at the other end. After a week had gone by, Christopher Robin knew that it was time to try again, and with the help of Rabbit and Piglet and all of Rabbit's friends and relations, he pulled at Pooh's paws until, pop! Pooh came out and everyone fell backwards. Christopher Robin thinks that this was definitely a silly old bear moment. Some days, Christopher Robin feels like going on a proper adventure, and it was on one such day that he decided it was time to go on an expedition to find the North Pole. That morning, he was sitting on his doorstep, putting on his shoes, when he heard a singing voice approaching. "Sing ho for a bear, sing ho for Pooh." Sure enough, Pooh appeared. In fact, it was a perfect moment for Pooh to appear because Christopher Robin needed someone to lean on so he could put on his shoes without falling over backwards. "Pooh," he announced, "we are going on an expedition." "An expedition?" asked Pooh. "I've never been on one of those. Where does it take us?" Christopher Robin told Pooh they were going to discover the North Pole, and when Pooh asked what that was, Christopher Robin shrugged his shoulders and said it was something you discover. He wasn't very sure himself, but he reassured Pooh that expeditions were something for everybody, so Pooh had better go and tell them all that they were coming too. And so, Christopher Robin and Pooh and all the others had set off on an adventure to find the North Pole, making sure they had enough provisions to keep them going. After what felt like a lot of walking and passing a dangerous place, which Christopher Robin felt sure was just the sort of place for an ambush, he decided they should stop and have a rest. It was now while everybody was happily eating a little something to restore their strength that Christopher Robin took Rabbit for a stroll up the stream and confessed that he wasn't absolutely sure what the North Pole looked like. He was sure he had known once, but he had now forgotten. Rabbit agreed that it must be some sort of pole, that it was probably sticking out of the ground. With that, they returned to the group to find that Roo had fallen into the water, and everybody was trying to save him. After much excitement, it was Pooh who managed to help him out of the water with a pole that Roo could hold on to. And at that moment, Christopher Robin was extremely happy, because Pooh not only saved Roo, he had found the North Pole. What a useful bear he was. Talking of useful, Christopher Robin gave one of the best parties in the forest after Pooh had been a very useful bear and helped save Piglet from the flood. It was a sunny morning, and Christopher Robin whistled to call Owl. Owl, he said, Pooh was so brave that I'm going to give a party for him. So Owl was sent to tell everybody in the forest that there was to be a tea party the following afternoon. Meanwhile, Christopher Robin made a long table out of some pieces of wood and arranged a place for everybody to sit. When the time came, Christopher Robin sat at one end of the table and Pooh sat at the other, with everyone else in between. Christopher Robin loved having everyone together, and it was particularly thrilling for him to see Roo, who had never been to a party before, jumping up and down in his chair with excitement. Owl was busy talking in Christopher Robin's ear about something that happened to a friend of his, when Christopher Robin felt it was time to say something. He banged the table with his spoon. This party is a party for Pooh, for what he did, and I have a present for him, he said. Christopher Robin passed the present down to Pooh. He's the best bear in all the world. And everyone begged Pooh to open the present there and then, which he did. And Christopher Robin couldn't help loving Pooh all the more because he was so happy with a special pencil case with pencils and all sorts of useful things inside. That evening, Christopher Robin, Pooh and Piglet walked home together, and Christopher Robin knew that it was one of those happy moments when he wouldn't want to be anywhere else in the world. He loved his bear, and his bear loved him, and that was all that mattered. The other favourite place for happy moments was on the bridge over the stream. This was where Christopher Robin liked to while away the afternoons, leaning his chin on the top of the rail of the bridge, watching the river slip away slowly beneath him. Sometimes Pooh joined him, his chin on the bottom rail, and other times Piglet and Roo would join them, but they had to lie down because they were too small even to reach the bottom rail. The best thing to do on the bridge, apart from watching the water running beneath you, was to play Pooh Sticks. It was a game invented by Pooh, which involved dropping sticks into the water and seeing which one came out of the other side of the bridge first. The funniest time of all was when Piglet was waiting for his stick to come out, and it turned out to be Eeyore floating downstream. The hardest thing about all these happy moments was that Christopher Robin knew they couldn't go on forever and ever. Of course, they would always stay in his memory and have the warmest of warm places in his heart. And Pooh and Piglet and Eeyore and Tigger and Rabbit and Owl and Kanga and Roo would always be his very best friends. Nothing could ever change that. But Christopher Robin had some new adventures to start, and it meant going away. Things would be different in the 100-Acre Wood, and it seemed that everybody knew something was changing even before he did. One morning, Christopher Robin came out of his house to find everybody there. A poem was thrust into his hands, a sort of goodbye and thank you poem, signed by everyone, and while he was reading it, Eeyore started to say something, but found it rather difficult. He turned to go, and the others began to edge away too, so that when Christopher Robin looked up to say thank you, only Pooh was still there. Christopher Robin was very comforted by the poem, and, calling Pooh to join him, started to amble through the forest. He wondered what Pooh liked doing best in the world, and after a moment's thought, Pooh replied, "What I like best in the whole world is me and Piglet going to see you." "And what happens after that?" asked Christopher Robin. Pooh paused for a moment. "Well," he continued, "you say, 'What about a little something?' And I say, 'Well, I shouldn't mind a little something, should you, Piglet? And it's a hummy sort of day outside, and the birds are singing. I like that too," said Christopher Robin. And then Christopher Robin held his hand out to take Pooh's paw. "Pooh, you won't forget me, will you? Not ever, even when I'm 100? "How old will you be then?" asked Pooh. 99, answered. Christopher Robin and Pooh promised he would never forget him. Christopher Robin smiled. "Come on then, it's time to go, silly old bear." And so they went, hand and paw, back through the forest, and of course they never did forget each other. And that's the end. Goodbye.